Pakistan, a nation of over 220 million people, stands at a critical juncture in its history. The country is grappling with a multifaceted crisis that encompasses political instability, economic turmoil, and deep-seated social divisions. This confluence of challenges threatens to unravel the fragile fabric of this South Asian nation. Understanding the complexities of Pakistan's predicament necessitates a deep dive into its political and economic landscape. The roots of Pakistan's current woes run deep. Pakistan's political landscape has been marred by turbulence and instability since its inception in 1947. The country was born out of the partition of British India, a process that was fraught with violence and mass displacement. This tumultuous beginning set the stage for a nation that would struggle with political stability for decades to come. The assassination of its founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, just a year after independence, created a power vacuum that the military was quick to fill. Jinnah, revered as the father of the nation, had envisioned a democratic and inclusive Pakistan. His untimely death left a leadership void that was difficult to fill, and the nascent state found itself grappling with internal divisions and external pressures. This set the stage for a recurring pattern of military interventions, undermining democratic institutions and hindering the development of a stable political system. The first major military coup occurred in 1958, led by General Ayub Khan, who justified his actions by citing the need to restore order and combat corruption. This intervention marked the beginning of a cycle where the military would step in whenever it deemed the civilian government ineffective or corrupt. The legacy of military rule continues to cast a long shadow over Pakistan's polity. Subsequent coups in 1977 and 1999 further entrenched the military's role in governance. Each period of military rule brought with it promises of reform and stability, but often resulted in the suppression of political dissent and the curtailment of civil liberties. The military's dominance has left an indelible mark on Pakistan's political culture, making it difficult for democratic institutions to take root and flourish. Even when civilian governments are in power, the military retains significant influence over key policy areas, particularly foreign affairs and security. This duality of power creates a complex dynamic where elected leaders must navigate the interests of the military while trying to implement their own agendas. The military's control over foreign policy, especially relations with neighboring India and Afghanistan, often overshadows the civilian government's diplomatic efforts. This often leads to a blurring of lines between civilian and military authority, creating tension and uncertainty. The civilian-military divide is not just a political issue, but also a societal one, affecting the very fabric of Pakistani society. The constant power struggle has led to periods of economic instability, social unrest, and a lack of continuity in governance. Despite these challenges, there have been moments of hope and progress, with movements for democracy and civil rights gaining momentum. However, the path to a truly stable and democratic Pakistan remains fraught with obstacles, as the nation continues to grapple with its complex political legacy. Pakistan's economic woes are deeply rooted in decades of mismanagement, structural imbalances, and a persistent failure to implement meaningful reforms. These issues have compounded over time, creating a complex web of economic challenges that are difficult to unravel. The lack of a coherent and consistent economic policy has only exacerbated the situation, leaving the country in a precarious state. The country's economy is plagued by low productivity, a narrow tax base, and a heavy reliance on imports. This reliance on imports has made the economy vulnerable to external shocks, such as fluctuations in global commodity prices and changes in international trade policies. The narrow tax base means that the government struggles to generate sufficient revenue to fund essential public services and infrastructure projects, further hampering economic growth. This has resulted in chronic fiscal deficits, unsustainable levels of public debt, and a precarious balance of payments situation. The government's inability to manage its finances effectively has led to a cycle of borrowing and debt accumulation, which has only worsened the country's economic outlook. The balance of payments crisis has made it difficult for Pakistan to meet its international financial obligations, leading to a loss of confidence among investors and international lenders. Inflation has spiraled out of control, eroding the purchasing power of ordinary citizens and pushing millions further into poverty. The rising cost of living has made it increasingly difficult for families to afford basic necessities, such as food, housing, and healthcare. This has led to widespread social unrest and a growing sense of frustration among the population, who feel that their government has failed to address their needs. The prices of essential goods and services such as food, fuel, and electricity have skyrocketed, making it increasingly difficult for families to make ends meet. The surge in prices has been driven by a combination of factors, including supply chain disruptions, increased demand, and government policies that have failed to address the root causes of inflation. As a result, many families are forced to make difficult choices, such as cutting back on essential expenses or taking on additional work to make ends meet. The economic crisis has also had a profound impact on businesses, with many struggling to stay afloat in the face of rising costs and declining consumer demand. This has led to a wave of layoffs and business closures, further exacerbating the country's economic woes. The situation is dire, and without significant and sustained efforts to address the underlying issues, Pakistan's economic future remains uncertain. Section 4. Trapped in an import-dependent cycle. Pakistan's trade imbalance is a major contributor to its economic woes. The country imports far more than it exports, resulting in a chronic trade deficit that drains its foreign exchange reserves. This dependence on imports makes Pakistan vulnerable to global price shocks and fluctuations in international markets. A key factor contributing to this imbalance is Pakistan's narrow export base, which is heavily reliant on textiles and agricultural products. Section 5. The global headwinds battering Pakistan. Pakistan's economic challenges are exacerbated by a confluence of external factors. The global economic slowdown, fueled by rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical uncertainty, has created a challenging environment for developing countries like Pakistan. The war in Ukraine has further complicated matters, leading to a surge in global commodity prices, particularly for oil and wheat. This has had a significant impact on Pakistan, which is a net importer of both commodities. Section 6. A nation divided, socio-political fault lines. Pakistan's political and economic challenges are intertwined with deep-seated social and political divisions. These divisions have historical roots dating back to the country's formation in 1947 and have only deepened over the decades. The country is grappling with issues such as religious extremism, ethnic tensions, and a widening gap between the rich and the poor. Religious extremism has led to violence and instability, affecting the daily lives of ordinary citizens. Ethnic tensions, particularly among the Balak, Pashtun, Sindhi, and Punjabi communities, have resulted in a fragmented society where mistrust and prejudice are rampant. These divisions have created a volatile environment that hinders national unity and progress. Social unrest is a common occurrence, with protests and demonstrations frequently erupting in various parts of the country. The lack of a cohesive national identity further exacerbates these issues, making it difficult for the government to implement policies that benefit all citizens. Political fragmentation is another major challenge. The political landscape in Pakistan is highly fragmented, with numerous parties vying for power. This fragmentation is not just a result of differing ideologies, but also of personal ambitions and regional loyalties. Pakistan's political landscape is characterized by a multitude of parties, often with overlapping ideologies and competing interests. This makes it difficult to form stable governments, as coalitions are often necessary but fragile. The constant jockeying for power among political parties leads to a lack of continuity in governance, which hampers long-term planning and development. This makes it difficult to build consensus on key issues and implement coherent policies. The inability to reach a consensus on critical matters such as economic reforms, education, and healthcare has left the country lagging behind in many areas. The frequent changes in government also mean that policies are often reversed or abandoned, leading to a lack of progress. Coalition governments are common, but they are often fragile and prone to collapse. The need to appease multiple coalition partners often results in compromises that dilute the effectiveness of policies. This fragility is a significant obstacle to achieving political stability and economic growth. Public dissatisfaction with the political class is widespread. Many Pakistanis feel disillusioned with their leaders, who they believe are more interested in self-enrichment and perpetuating their own power than in serving the needs of the people. This disillusionment has led to a lack of trust in the political system and low voter turnout in elections. Many Pakistanis feel that their elected representatives are more interested in self-enrichment and perpetuating their own power than in serving the needs of the people. Corruption is rampant, with politicians and bureaucrats often accused of embezzling public funds and engaging in nepotism. This corruption undermines public trust and makes it difficult to implement policies that could improve the lives of ordinary citizens. The younger generation in particular is growing increasingly frustrated with the status quo. They are demanding change and are more vocal about their dissatisfaction. Youth-led movements and protests are becoming more common, signaling a potential shift in the political landscape. However, without significant reforms, these movements may struggle to bring about lasting change. Economic challenges further compound the socio-political issues. High unemployment rates, inflation, and a lack of opportunities have left many Pakistanis struggling to make ends meet. The economic disparity between the rich and the poor continues to widen, leading to increased social tensions and unrest. The education and healthcare systems are also in dire need of reform. Poor quality of education and inadequate healthcare services have left many citizens without the necessary tools to improve their lives. These systemic issues contribute to the overall sense of disillusionment and frustration among the populace. Despite these challenges, there is hope for Pakistan's future. Civil society organizations, activists, and ordinary citizens are working tirelessly to address these issues and bring about positive change. With sustained effort and commitment, it is possible to overcome these socio-political fault lines and build a more united and prosperous nation.